All right, what do making pies and having babies have to do with each other? So I'm really lucky. My office here in North Arlington, we are next to an amazing pie store. It's called Living the Pie Life. And it's run by a couple of Arlington moms. They used to have, I think they used to have a table at a farmer's market, ended up deciding to have this pie store in a building that's literally the mirror image of mine. So when my windows are open, they're literally across the street, like the pie smell comes in. It's kind of amazing. And they started to build out their space when we moved here. So when my son was about a year and a half, 2 years. So we've literally seen this pie store grow. And this time of year, there's just this giddy sense of excitement around the neighborhood because their hours change. They're going into like serious, it's pie season, right? So Thanksgiving, my husband's family, don't know why, I don't know if it's Maryland, they do 3 different pies. So it's like apple, pumpkin, lemon. My family were straight pumpkin. But this pie store, they just posted the other day, their hours are changing because they're baking all the pies for American Thanksgiving. 600 pies. 600 pies. Like, can you imagine the preparation it takes to bake 600 pies? So you've got a couple of good things going for you. One, you have a limited amount of pies a type of pies that you're going to bake. Two, you have just a couple of days that people are going to come pick them up, and people want them for a certain day. So technically that's like your due date, right? And there's certain things that have to be done. Like all the apples have to be peeled, all the crusts have to be made. Like you have this very clear preparation process, and you've done it before. You know how to make hundreds of pies. You even have a whole process for pickup, and literally like people line the streets behind my office to come pick up their pies at their particular time. So it's a very clear process. It's like it's easy to predict. You might have a couple pies left over, but so what? Somebody's going to buy them. Let's just be honest, or I'll eat them. But you know exactly how to prepare. You know when everything's due. You know the end result, and it's easy to repeat. That is not childbirth. I don't care how many kids you have. So let's talk about similarities. So the similarities in some respects is we have a date, right? So they have Thanksgiving's a big one, American Thanksgiving. Christmas is a big one. We do a lot of pies around here. Generally, you have a date. Where the pie store is really lucky is that the pie store, that date doesn't change. With moms, the date can change. For example, both of my children, I joke, they were both 41 and a half weeks. If it were up to my oldest, he would still be in there. I kid you not. He's my homebody. I love him dearly, but like, boy did not want to get out of the pool. So you can get a date. It might be sooner. It might be later. You don't know. Other similarity, pie. You know you're going to get pie. You know you're going to make pie. You know you're going to sell pie. Baby, you know you're cooking a baby. Pretty much that's where the similarities end. I have had, I think, it's a blessing, curse, double-edged sword of social media and people wanting to understand more about labor and delivery and wanting to prepare. And in my part of the country, we like to prepare. Women like to know things. We are very A student. We are gung-ho achievers around here. And I always have to smile a little bit when women come in. I know I'm supposed to come talk to you, and I know that I'm supposed to come see you before having a baby, and I want to prevent all the bad things. And I kind of smile because, yes, I'm so glad that they've come so we can at least start these conversations and we can start to bring things up, and I can kind of pull them back from whatever rabbit holes they've started to go down. But it also is an opportunity to kind of use whatever they come in with, whatever questions, to kind of open the door to other things and other conversations that might actually be more relevant. So for example, people know to ask about abdominal separation. great. It's a wonderful opportunity to talk about 100% of women, your abs are going to separate. That's just kind of how it goes. Now, how things are going to turn out on the other side, then we start to have that conversation about, okay, here are the variables. Some you can control and some you may not. Talking about prolapse. I mean, I think I mentioned last week, one of the first times I ever heard about prolapse was in my first pelvic floor training course. And I was like 23 or something. I'm completely mortified because, of course, in medicine, they show you like worst case scenario. But having a conversation about prolapse, and now we know that there may be a genetic component to a certain grouping of people that do have that. And so definitely check out my Thanksgiving post. It's the same thing every year. Talking to your family, talk to your mom, talk to your grandma about prolapse. You know, did they have issues with that? Is that something that you need to think about? Those sorts of things, just having those conversations. Other things that come up, we get to talk about finding the resources that you may or may not need. One, don't buy a laminator to laminate your birth plan. Just don't do it. Two, lactation consultant, get one. The nice thing is if your facility doesn't have in-house, there's so many opportunities now that are virtual that will give you education before delivery. So during pregnancy, you can have more education about it, especially now that there's not a ton of in-person classes. I have a very good friend, the Balanced Boob. She's an excellent virtual lactation consultant. She's based out of Maryland. Just finding those options so you're clear ahead of time. If I need this, then this is, at least I know where to go. The conversations about doulas, like I had no idea what a doula was. We ended up getting one for our first, and I'm so glad we did. Just to have an advocate for you. I mean, my husband was so funny with our first, because I'm like, oh, I know what's going on. I'm in sound mind and body. No, you were so not. And so it was nice having somebody that when my son wasn't recovering from contractions and things like that, she was a midwife in the UK, that she kind of was able to look and be like, hey, why don't we try a different position, or why don't I go get somebody? Or it's just nice to have an advocate, because you're not in your right mind. I don't care who you are. And then my poor husband, bless his heart. So the first day of my induction, my email got hacked. Ironically, I found out from my OB, who was a friend, who we worked in the same hospital together, and she had just induced me the night before, and it was her first shift back after she had a baby. And she emailed me in the morning. She's like, it was one of those like, hey, I'm stuck in London and I can't get back. Can you send me some money, sort of things? And she emails me. She's like, I could have sworn I induced you last night. So he's trying to, salvage my email, and I'm like in, the first day of my induction. So there's a lot going on, and you can't predict what that is. Maybe when you're in the pie business, maybe somebody cuts a finger when you're peeling apples. Maybe somebody can't show up from work because they're sick, or like there's a few variables here and there, but like in general, you kind of know what you're getting into when you're making 600 pies, where I dare say we like to think we know what we're getting into with delivery. And I think that's where these conversations with a pelvic floor P2, I'm not going to put all of my knowledge in your head because I can't prevent everything. There's too many variables, but at least to start to have the conversations so that when questions do come up, you can think, she mentioned something about that. Or, oh, you know what? It is important for me to make sure that my nursing is right, because if my nipple feels like hamburger and I'm not sleeping because it hurts like what, then everything else is going to be kind of out the window. I'm not really going to be able to focus on getting out for a walk, or what my pelvic floor feels like, or things like that. So, moral of the story, there are things, much like baking 600 pies before American Thanksgiving, that you can plan, but there are plenty of things that you just as much as possible, learn as much as you possibly can, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But I think that's the benefit of kind of having those conversations with a birth professional ahead of time, not so that you can rigidly plan how things are supposed to be. Don't forget, don't laminate your birth plan. But just so you have an idea, so that when things do come up, it's not the first time it's shown up. And you're at least aware of kind of, you've got a touch point for immediately postpartum when everything kind of seems like it's on its head. So pies, delivery, some similarities, some not. Maybe you're hungry for pie right now. Again, it's living the pie life in North Arlington. But as always, if you have any questions about, we're going to be focusing in the next couple weeks primarily on questions about preparation for birth, preparation for postpartum, as well as, where can we prevent and where do we kind of just have to see what the combination of variables shows up for us. So if you have any questions, please pop them in my DMs. If you're in the US, happy American Thanksgiving. If you're not, go eat some turkey, and we'll see you in the DMs.